All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for our first ever Ask Me Anything with Dr. Mehra. Before we go ahead and kind of dive in, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Mandira Mehra, who's a double board certified neurologist and interventional pain physician and medical journalist. So welcome, Dr. Mehra. If you'd like to say anything about yourself, any intro, that'd be great.
Thank you so much. And it's great to be here. As always, I love spreading some knowledge with the P360 team. And the best part is that we always get some great questions. And it's always great to talk about communication, improving efficiency in medicine, and really being able to take that next step, whether it be with technology, improving patient care, just being very forward thinking. So these are just always amazing and truly inspiring.
Great. Perfect. Well, so in the weeks leading up to this, we have had a couple of questions come in. So I think we'll just kind of dive right in and kind of go through those. And if anybody kind of wants to chime in and put it in the comments, we can go ahead and answer those while we have Dr. Mehra for this hour. So the first question we had gotten was, in a typical month, how many reps, whether that's a pharma rep, a medical device rep, or any type of specialty, do you meet with on average?
So, it will vary, obviously, but if you look at a typical week or 2-week period, it may be a handful or it could be up to 10. Some of it depends on, have I actually initiated that contact? Have I reached out? Is there a question regarding a new medication, something developing, a complication? Alternatively, they may drop by, often unannounced, which, I'm sure is a hot topic for most providers out there or most physicians out there, is the unannounced drop by. And so that's very hard to predict. This week alone, I've had 2. Next week, I may have 5 or 6. So it does vary. On average, having a couple drop by every week, not unusual. The difficulty lies in oftentimes me feeling bad, me feeling guilty, because it's wasted communication. I may be in the operating room. I may be off doing admin tasks. I may not even be in the office. And my staff will call me, text me, say, hey, X, Y, and Z representative, pharma rep, medical device rep has stopped by. And I know how much time and energy that takes on their part as well. Vice versa, I may be just loaded with patients that day, just back to back to back patients. And I know they're physically in my office. So that adds a whole new pressure, a whole new dimension that, just being a good person, I'd love to meet with them. But, it's just not always possible.
Can definitely see that. Just from a time management standpoint, that's got to be really difficult, because you're balancing out which one needs my attention. And of course, you obviously have to treat the people in person that you have on your schedule, I assume.
Absolutely. It ends up becoming, inefficient. It ends up being this ping pong effect, right? Where they've stopped by, I'm busy, maybe I'm not even physically in the office. And so, there's some element of surprise that I've never understood. And that's kind of been the culture for the last, how many decades, 30 decades, 3 decades, that there's this element of surprise, like, hey, the rep has stopped by. And then it almost makes you cringe. As a physician, you clench a little bit. You're like, what am I supposed to do? And I don't have to list all the tasks and all the burden of, things that are on my shoulders on a daily basis. Patient care is only one thing. Forget about the paperwork, forget about staffing, admin, research. So there are so many things laid out in a singular day. Because of this element of surprise, you end up with this ineffective, inefficient communication, frustration. And at the end of the day, I think both parties end up unhappy. Both the physician as well as the representative didn't get a high yield result as a result.
Yeah, I can imagine, because it's, both sides are trying to accomplish something, and it's just not the path to go through.
You would think, when you look at other industries, you would think that there's much more efficient ways to communicate and for both parties to be happy and to achieve their goal, whether it be educating me about a new device, a new medication, whether it be answering a question that I reached out maybe 2 weeks ago and now someone's reaching out to me. You look at other industries and the efficiencies that they've been able to accomplish. And a lot of it is thanks to technology. They've done a great job, whereas medicine is it's missing that catalyst. I feel like the pandemic was a huge jumpstart to telemedicine and making that happen, which was necessary. But we probably would have gone another 20 years without telemedicine being jump-started. So I think that medicine needs to really get there. Doctors are feeling the frustration, representatives are feeling the frustration, and it's trickling down to patient care as well, which ultimately is probably all of our goal.
Right. Right. No, exactly. It's definitely that domino effect, and you can feel it no matter where you stand in that kind of that spectrum. So I just wanted to again welcome anyone who is joining us in our live stream. And if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the comments, and then we'll make sure that Dr. Mehra addresses them as we kind of move through. But until, as to just kind of keep going, another one of the CEDAR questions we got this week was, how many try to meet you that you don't see? And I know you kind of answered that sometimes they come in, but if you had to guess, like, even if you don't see them right there when they come in, is it something where they come in and you schedule them for an appointment that's later? Does that sometimes happen? Or is it better, do you think about 50% of them end up getting an appointment with you? Or does it really kind of vary based on relationships maybe that you've built with them? Or how does that look?
Everything you've mentioned, Kate, that you've touched on actually holds true. So if it's a representative that I have a relationship with, chances are they may actually end up texting me, hey, Dr. Mehra, I'm in your office. Love your favorite representative, Eric. And I'll be able to text back usually within the day, maybe 24 hours, say, hey, let's set something up for the future. Now, unfortunately, I would say if you're new to the industry, if you're new to my office, you have no relationship with me, the chances of you actually getting a timely meeting with me, very unlikely. And they'll drop by a whole packet of information. They'll end up stopping by a few times in the week, few times even in the next week. But chances are we're not going to connect because of that inefficiency. And then at the end of the day, it ends up becoming more of an annoyance. And so then I look through the packet when I have time and I'll say, this is a useful medication, not a useful medication. I may or may not have more questions. Maybe I'll be reaching out. Maybe I'll depend on the next big conference to learn more. But at the end of the day, they're not closing the deal. I'm not learning about a new medication or therapy available for my patients. So I would say, again, both sides end up losing out because it may be a great therapy that I'm not learning about for my patients. It may be a great device that could be saving and changing lives. But because it wasn't broached to me in an effective or efficient manner, I never get to hear about it. And so if I worked on their team, what I would say is establish those relationships, find a commonality, find a platform where we can communicate effectively that's HIPAA safe, that's communication safe, where all parties are happy, and we can decrease this ping pong effect again. At the end of the day, we all want to be happy. We all want to provide great patient care. But how can we do that when these inefficiencies continue to happen? And, I tend to look at my world from my vantage point. But let's be honest, it wasted my receptionist time, my medical assistant's time, someone else's time who then had to come put it on my desk and then text me or email me and say, so-and-so stop by. So it's actually levels and layers. We're peeling back the onion here. This is just me sharing my perspective, but I also understand it's wasting so many people's time. There has to be a better way. Now, once that representative, like you said, Kate, has an established relationship with me, then things are a little bit different. But now we're peeling back a new layer of the onion. What are they allowed to text me? What are we allowed to discuss on the phone? What are we allowed to discuss via email? Now, I'm very familiar from a physician standpoint with HIPAA, but maybe I'm not completely familiar with all the compliance issues from their standpoint. You know what I mean? And so again, oftentimes I'll be shooting a text, they'll be shooting a text, and a little voice, a little character on my shoulder says, is this okay? Can we be discussing this? Will I get in legal trouble? Will they get in trouble from their, higher ups? And so again, it just makes me stop and think. Other industries have figured out a way. They figured out the laws, they figured out platforms, they figured out mechanisms to make this stuff super efficient. So I'm hopeful and inspired that, we're having this conversation. We're hopefully moving that needle where it needs to go so we can eliminate this wasted time for everybody.
No, that's actually a really good point. Having that efficiency, so that you brought up that ping pong effect, and that is such a clear visual to, I think, anyone who would be listening to this, because that back and forth and not being able to schedule something, not being able to get an answer to something, not be able to get whatever information you're looking for, it's just can waste so much time where you're like, the frustration levels just get more and more compounded. So
can you believe that I still receive faxes, Kate? Can you believe this? I have reached out for a copay or a form or whatever I need, and they'll say, well, I faxed it to your office, Dr. Mehra. Can you imagine the last time Amazon, Uber, Insta, DoorDash, you name whatever industry said, hey, I'm going to shoot you a fax. Louis Vuitton said, I'm going to shoot you a fax. I can't think of any industry that still does that. Not even the government. Uncle Sam didn't even tell me that. So you have to imagine that when I hear this, I'm like, am I in my dad's era? My dad's a doctor from 50 years ago. It's like, how are we still even using, why do I even have a fax machine in my office? Like, it's just bizarre to me. And I point that out just to really nail home that point, that we've got to do better than the fax machine. We've got to do better than the representative saying, I will drop by copay cards tomorrow. I'm like, the patient's in my office now. I'm going to end up prescribing a different medication that works similarly because they'll be able to afford it and they don't have this issue with you drop, So if you're in medicine, if you're on either side of the alley here, you can relate, you can understand the frustration. And the goal here is we want to provide effective, efficient, safe, legal care, right? Now we're adding all those layers. So legal, safe, effective, efficient. And I can't wait to see what AI does to the entire industry. Mm-hmm. Again, it's revolutionizing every industry you can think of. Whether you're booking a flight online, a little chatbot will come up. We've all experienced some level of it. And so I'm hoping that pharma, that device reps, that us doctors can come together and take advantage of that. Maybe a chatbot pops up on my side and says, Dr. Mehra will get back to you. Maybe it didn't involve 4 of my staff members. Maybe a chatbot pops up on their side, but at least we know that effective communication will get to the party that it needs to get to in an effective, efficient manner.
No, and that makes so much sense. I mean, if someone sent me a fax today, I wouldn't even think to look there. I wouldn't even think to do that. I think in the world of, AI and with different chatbots and having those intelligent bots to be able to help to streamline that. And it can trigger workflows on the back end while they're saying, hey, we're going to get back to you soon. And just kind of using the technology and innovations that we have on hand. So that's really a key point here. We do have another comment that came in. Let me read you this one. This one says, please advise the remedy or exercise for body and knee pain. Do you have any advice for that?
The remedy or exercise for body and knee pain. Well, every patient, every human is going to be different. And so those are kind of 2 separate questions, right? If you have overall diffuse body pain, the first thing we want to look at, really honestly, is saying, what is the root cause of that? Right? Mm-hmm. Do we have an autoimmune condition? Do we have rheumatoid arthritis? How old are you? Are you a 21-year-old that just ran a marathon? Are you 87 years old and, we've got the wear and tear going on? So the first thing we have to think about with body pain is, what is the etiology? What is the cause? Hopefully, if we can identify the cause, that gives us a great now pathway to how we're going to treat it, right? So each one of those things I just mentioned, wear and tear, arthritis, acute injury, each path will have a different treatment form to that. Now, in general, if we talk about pain, whether it be knee pain, body pain, we like to follow some algorithms that we know work, that are evidence-based, right? So first we identify etiology. How do we identify the cause? Well, we do a series of tests sometimes. I know they're not comfortable as a patient, but maybe we'll get some imaging. This may involve an X-ray, a CAT scan, an MRI, different imaging ultrasound. These different imaging modalities will give us great clues, great pictures as to what's going on. Once we have that imaging modality, once we hopefully have our answer, that now says, will someone like myself, Dr. Mehra, will I be sticking a needle in you to eliminate that pain or reduce that pain? Will it be a combination of therapies? The greatest thing that we've discovered in the past decade is that usually a multimodality approach is best. What does multimodality mean? Big fancy word for you're using a doctor, a physical therapist, a nutritionist, a team member. You're the driver of that team, and we're kind of your pit crew, right? We're all of us coming together, giving you this multimodality approach is the best way to pain. Maybe it involves some medication. Now, I know when I mention the word medication, it's very polarizing. People immediately think opiate medication. The truth is there are many non-opiate pain medication options. There are many topical medication options. Topical means analgesics or medications you can apply on the surface. For example, lidocaine, Aspercreme, different steroid creams. There are different things that you can apply on the surface. Maybe it's a heating pad. Maybe it's a TENS unit. We all used to see Shaquille O'Neal do those commercials, but they actually make medical grade TENS units. So again, multimodality approach, whether it be to knee pain, body pain. If we're focusing in on the knee, again, my big question would be, what does your knee look like? Show me an X-ray, show me a CAT scan, show me an MRI. Is it bone-on-bone pain? Do you have an effusion, like a pocket of fluid in there? Is there a ligament tear, sprain, strain? The hot topic thing that's really come up in the past 7 to 7 to 10 years is regenerative medicine. And this is the super exciting stuff in our field. Steroids have been used for decades, but regenerative medicine is things like PRP, things like stem cell, which again, I know can be polarizing, but we'll do a separate medical talk on all these things. But the point is we're using our body's own ability to heal and to hopefully get better without having to use some of these medications that may have detrimental side effects. So all in all, that was an amazing question. As you can tell, I could talk on and on about this. I feel passionate about it. I love helping people just, first of all, understanding their pain. You have to remember pain also has a conscious, a cultural, a political element to it, right? You have to be awake and alive to feel pain. If you're not awake or you're sedated by anesthesia, we don't feel pain. And you have to remember it's also cultural. Here in America, we perceive pain very differently than maybe Europe does or Asia does. We as Americans consume more pain medication than any other country in the world. Now, why is that? I'm not hating, I'm a pain doctor, but to understand these complex elements is also super important. So I could go on and on. Fabulous question. Lots of hope. The point is I want you to have lots of hope. There's lots of hope to treating knee pain, body pain, back pain, any kind of pain.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that answer. That was definitely very informative. And to piggyback on something that you mentioned about that being multimodality to help someone with pain, what type of nutrition or diet plan do you usually recommend to your patients? Is it a Mediterranean diet, an anti-inflammatory diet? I know that can go a lot of different directions and probably based on the person, but is there anything that you kind of lean towards?
My favorite thing, Kate, is I say, keep it simple. At the end of the day, and we're assuming someone doesn't have a specific restriction, right? You're not gluten-free or vegetarian or religious issues, keep it simple. At the end of the day, and I know, without me going into a whole nutrition lecture, that the carrots and hummus on the couch is going to be healthier than the potato chips and ranch. I love potato chips and nacho cheese and all that gluttonous type food. But at the end of the day, we know that. Another big thing I think we overlook often when we talk about diet is, what is our liquid diet like? How much soda are we consuming? How much juice are we consuming? Some of those juice drinks are even worse than soda. You're consuming your whole sugar intake in one drink. Can it be replaced with water, a different alternative? In your coffee, in your morning coffee, or my Starbucks drink that I love so much, my caramel macchiato, do I say hold the caramel? Do I say hold the whipped cream? That can make a huge difference from just a health perspective, the sugar highs and lows, diabetes, obesity. Then you talk about knee pain. One of my favorite conversations is patients that come in and say, Doc, I've got knee pain. And I'll say, well, you're about 100 pounds overweight or whatever. In the non-judgmental way, I'll say, that's adding so much pressure on your knee. And they'll say, well, Doc, I had pressure before, I had pain before I had the weight gain. I say, but you're not doing yourself any favors. So actually, weight and nutrition are very intimately connected to pain. So at the end of the day, I say, keep it simple. We know the Mediterranean diet that you mentioned has great health benefits from a cardio perspective, from a stroke prevention perspective, diabetes perspective. So the Mediterranean diet is great. And when you look at it, it's simple things. It's fresh food, it's fish, it's high in olive oil, right? So even when you're cooking at night, I say cook at night versus buying processed food or going for Uber, which I know we all do too often, or delivery. And that's because when you're cooking it, you're actually controlling the amount of sodium, the butter, the processed elements of it. I know there's tons of services out there now. We've all seen the ads for them that will deliver the fresh food that you can then semi-cook. Whatever works for you. You don't have to really spend a lot of money to do it right. I think it's more about planning. So the two things I would tell patients for nutrition or anyone that's interested is keep it simple and planning. Plan out your week, plan out your day. So you're not resulting in 5 o'clock hunger, going for the vending machine, going for a high sugary drink. We all get hungry, we all get hangry. And so we quickly go for those things, but the highs and lows, the havoc it wreaks on our body isn't great. And at the end of the day, don't look at the front of the packaging, look at the back. Something may say fat-free, super healthy, fiber, heart prevention, whatever. Don't believe anything written on the front of a package. Look at the back. Look at how many calories, how much fat, how much fiber. Break it down, start understanding it. You don't need a medical degree to really do that. It just takes a few extra minutes.
That's actually great advice. I've never heard somebody say it like, don't look at the front, look at the back, but that is a great overall advice when you're shopping. So Another question that was sent in previously. Let me go back to this list, which is, what, in your opinion, is the most effective way to connect with you as a physician?
As a physician, so I assume we're going back to the representative, not patient connecting with me, right? Patient, you
Right.
just follow the channels, go through the office, we'll get you in as soon as possible. From a representative standpoint, pharma representative, device representative, the best way is scheduling it, letting the office know. They will trickle down, eventually let me know, till we get a platform in place, till we get the technology where we can eliminate the middleman. At least scheduling it properly is better than the element of surprise. It gets super awkward. And this has happened at least once or twice a month where two representatives will even stop by. And now it ends up being this, sometimes they're competitor, devices or competitor medications.
Mhm.
And it's like, I should have a reality TV show at my office. It's like super awkward. Everyone's kind of tiptoeing around the fact, and then who's Dr. Mehra going to meet with? So now it's like extra pressure on me. So I would say scheduling, reaching out, scheduling, and not taking a patient slot, but just scheduling properly, saying, hey, when would Dr. Mehra have 10 minutes to chat about this new therapy? I really think her patient population would benefit from this. Here's my card, here's my information, and we'll go from there. I promise you, most doctors will get back to you. I know we're not the best at getting back to people, but eventually we should get back to you, especially if your interests truly align with ours. If you are trying to sell me on a chemotherapy drug, that makes no sense to me. So also do your research. A lot of representatives are so excited. They're so young. They're so hungry to make a sale. They haven't even done their research. And this has happened. I'm listed as an interventional pain physician. So what's confusing about that is while I do procedures and I go into the operating room, I'm not doing the same thing as a neurosurgeon per se, right? So I've had neurosurgery device people come to me because just with a Google search, they saw that I had OR time. Or maybe they were in a rep told me last week, I was in the hospital, I saw your name on the OR board. So I am now presenting you with this operating device. And I'm like, but I'm not a neurosurgeon. So
Yeah.
it was like kind of clever that you did that, but it was also, you didn't do your full research. You didn't
Mhm.
see what my board certification was in. I can't use this device. It wasted my time and his time, so do your research and you'll save yourself so much time.
That's actually good advice. I think it's good advice that's applicable through a lot of different verticals. But yes, doing research, making sure you're prepared before reaching out seems like it's common sense. So, also, if you had to say what type of information you're looking for from reps on average, I know you mentioned before, like the copay cards. What other information are you looking for from reps specifically? I'm sure that varies whether they're a pharma rep or a device rep, but in general.
No, copay cards are a big one, right? Because at the end of the day, I can have all this great knowledge and I can prescribe any medication to my patient. But if I haven't done my research as a physician and they call me back and say, Doc, my insurance doesn't cover it, it's too expensive, I don't have the copay card, do you have samples? Again, we're back at that ping pong effect. We're back at that ineffective inefficiencies. Now the patient is upset. Now I'm upset. Now my staff has utilized time. So if a rep can actually anticipate some of that, and in order to anticipate, you have to care a little bit, right? It's not just let me do the presentation and go home. You have to think on the next level. All right, Dr. Mehra told me she sees 30, 40 patients a day. This is her age demographic. This is her patient demographic. This is her payer mix. Now, if a representative took the 10 minutes to understand that and listen to that, maybe he or she would be able to anticipate my needs so much better. Wow, you may need this many copay cards, this many samples. I've had representatives tell me, have the patient reach out to me or my team. So many representatives have a team that can kind of help bridge the insurance questions or the copay questions or whatever. But sometimes the representatives don't know that, or they don't tell my staff that. And so again, we're like, sorry, we tried to prescribe your medication to 10 people last week. Nobody could get it filled. And then they reach out to their boss. Then they learn, oh, I had a team in place that could have helped you. It's like, sorry, now they're on this other therapy. So, they lost the opportunity. We lost the opportunity. At the end of the day, patients come in, they live in the real world, Kate. They want everything now, especially with telemedicine, with AI. It's like, Dr. Mehra, if you can't do it, your neighbor will do it. A bigger hospital system will do it. Somebody will do it. A different representative will do it. It's like the law of the jungle, right? It's someone bigger, better will be out there doing it. Now, what I always say to my favorite reps that I have these relationships with is if you're not keeping up, if your company is not keeping up, then you're going to lose out on that business. And you may actually have the superior therapy, right? We've all, as doctors, I can think of at least 10 different therapies, whether it be a blood pressure medication, a pain medication, a spinal cord stimulator, that probably was superior 10 years ago. But their PR, their marketing, their rep team didn't do a great job, or there was some failure in execution, and it's kind of become forgotten about. But some new hot topic drug that has tons of side effects, it may not be great, but they did a great job marketing. They did a great job reaching out to docs. They had a team in place. They took advantage of technology. They weren't sending faxes. Maybe they're going to do better. And it's unfortunate because from a physician standpoint, I want that unbiased advice. I want the advice that, listen, I know this is my competitor, but this is the therapy I'm offering. Here's the advantages, disadvantages. Here's the patients it could benefit. Right. If I can get that unbiased advice, I no longer feel like I'm talking to a car salesman. No offense to the car salesman, but you don't feel that sleazy kind of, you're just trying to sell me on something, and that can only come if a rep truly understands the product, if they understand the options within their company, within their structure. What can we do to help the doctor? Who can we reach out to? What science liaisons do we have? And so forth and so on. The more they can help streamline the process in my office. We're not doing nursing, PA, MA, email back and forth. Now, Dr. Mehra, now we're 10 strings long. The more they can streamline that process, the happier the docs are, the happier we all are.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. It's just kind of making sure that is consistent with their messaging and that it's easily accessible to you. So that's actually a great point. So thank you for bringing that up. We have another question in the chat, which is, how can pharmaceutical companies better support you in your practice?
That's a great question. And there are so many things I think on even a daily basis that pharma could do. Some of them we've already touched upon. It's sort of anticipating that next need. Also being available. Just being available would be a huge thing that pharma could do. So if a patient does have a complication, if a patient has a need, if I personally have a need for my patients, just being available is golden. And the reason I say that is in today's day and age, whether it's a text, an email, whether I have to reach out to the company that then pages you, there's so many different ways to reach out to people. I also have to keep that in the Rolodex of my mind. Like, well, for these 3 people I text, these 4 people I email, these 2 people my MA has to reach out to the company who then gets back to me. Again, that inefficiency, just being available at the click of a button, you've given me my life back. You've given the patient their life back, and you yourself have gotten your life back because you've been available to communicate. And I understand that, the representative themselves is not working 24 hours a day, but there have to be features, technology, chatbots, there must be so many things in place where we can effectively and efficiently communicate. And I'll know, okay, that the person will get back to me in 1 hour. The representative will communicate with me next week because they're on vacation, but here's their fill-in. It's not, hey, MA Julia, did you reach out to Pharma X? Yeah, I did. I haven't heard back yet. Then tomorrow I'm asking again. The patient's called again. I'm asking again. Hey, any answer yet? You're kind of just reaching out into the ocean. You're sending a pigeon with a note, but you don't know when the pigeon's going to come back. It's like, literally, that's the kind of communication we're dealing with. So communication is key. In real estate, they say location, location, location. I would say in pharma, it's communication, communication, communication. If we can effectively communicate, what more could we ask for?
Yeah, no, that's great. I feel like I preach that all the time about being an effective communicator. So we kind of answered this in a little bit of roundabout way, but maybe put a fine point on it from another comment. It says, where do pharma reps go wrong? So what could they learn from this lack of communication?
Can I tell you one of the worst experiences I've ever had with a pharma rep, which happened actually in the past year? And this has never happened to me before. It was a very busy clinic day for me, back-to-back, patients booked, patients waiting days, sometimes weeks for that specific appointment. And I'm good attitude, staff is happy, sun is shining, bought everybody lunch. I walk into a patient room, I rush into this patient room, and who's sitting there? A representative. And so I'm a little bit confused now because immediately I recognize her tag, I recognize the name. She had stopped by 2 weeks in a row. Unfortunately, we didn't get to connect. And I'm like, oh, how can I help you today? What, I didn't realize you were a patient, or, I'm so tickled that you actually want to see me as a physician. Is that allowed? She said, oh, no, I just couldn't see you for 2 weeks. So I thought I'd schedule under one of your patient slots. Now you can imagine the, I think, anger that I felt. And in a day I try to just be even keel about most things. I rarely kind of feel angry, but I actually felt angry. I felt frustrated. We had a conversation. It wasted my time. It wasted her time, because I said, I can't reward this kind of behavior. I respect the hustle. I respect that you put your best foot forward to really get in here. And I know you stopped by 2 weeks in a row. I said, this is a super busy time. It's the end of the year. Everyone's trying to get in, but this is not okay. And I said, I'd love to talk to you. Let's connect. I think your product has some utility, but this is not okay. And then obviously I had a conversation with my staff as well that said, well, she didn't share that with us, right? She just connected as a patient and somehow snuck in through the avenues. And that has to be hands down one of the worst experiences for multiple reasons. It showed a breakdown and lack of understanding on the representative's part, right? And a lack of understanding. And would their company or parent company have supported that? That probably should be explained or taught in some training. Don't make an appointment under a patient slot to be seen, because now I was immediately turned off. Do I even want to use your product? Do I want a relationship with you? So it was just a huge turn off and probably one of the worst experiences. So I would say, know your audience. Know your audience. Are you speaking to the physician? Are you speaking to a nurse practitioner, a PA? An MA? Are you, understanding that and just genuinely looking at it from their perspective? Doesn't matter which provider you're speaking with. Is it a surgeon? Is it someone that's in the office? But don't go above and beyond and stalk people by their car. Don't make patient visits. There are just certain lines that shouldn't be crossed. And at the end of the day, we have to remember and respect both of our roles. I understand the hustle and the need to get in, but you have to understand our role is to really provide great patient care. And if you're infringing upon that, I would say that that's an area that pharma can go wrong, is really just infringing upon patient care, because we immediately get turned off if that happens.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I told you I should have a reality TV show.
Yeah, I mean, it's bold is the first word that comes to my mind, that somebody would think that was okay, but kind of leads back to your earlier point where it's, really understanding the nuances that come with that balance of time, both on their end and your end. So kind of crossing that over is just, seems like, unfortunately, the company is the one that's going to lose out on that. So a couple more questions that have come in. We'll try to get to them as we can. This one says, what are some challenges you face when trying to stay up to date on the latest medical research?
That's a great question. And I love whoever asked that, because they're understanding the time constraints that I'm under, or that any physician's under, but also the need to constantly understand the newer technologies, newer therapeutics available. And in today's day and age, if you just watch a football game or a kid's television show, every other commercial is for a new medication. When I was in my medical training over a decade ago at this point, there may have been a handful of drugs available for diabetes, right? The basic insulins and whatnot. And now there's like 300 or 400 different medications. And that's just one tiny niche example I'm giving you. But the reality is, how do you understand all of those things? And so speaking with representatives is actually a huge part of my education, because when I speak with them, either one-on-one or we're at a conference, that's a great way to learn in a big way, right? Conferences, I would say, are a big way to learn. Conferences nowadays, because of the pandemic again, are either virtual or in person, but you're given all this high yield information in a crunched time, which is great. The other way we can do it, of course, we all get email updates. We've all signed up for our specialty specific emails. And so a lot of companies or therapeutics have figured out a way to give you like the headline, right? Like a bullet point. And if you read something real quick at a I don't want to say toilet reading, because that sounds foul, but you know what I mean? Like, in between patients, in between cases, in between waiting for the operating room, you're looking down at your phone, you can quickly read about something. If something actually touches your patients, your patient care, you can actually read and research more of that. But it's definitely a challenge only because of the time constraints. Now, when you're a student, when you're a resident, there's protected time built in when you're training. And it's a beautiful thing. You realize when you enter the real world, you lose that protected time. on a daily basis. There's zero time carved out for Dr. Mehra to say, hey, you're going to do research for 1 hour. You're going to get to read on the most up-to-date things. So the unfortunate part is it has to happen on my personal time. And it's a part of the profession is you have to stay up to date. You cannot become a dinosaur in your field for two main reasons. Number one, you'll become extinct like the dinosaurs. And number two, you're doing your patients an injustice. You're not potentially giving them the best optimized care for whatever their need is. And again, you could be doing harm to them. They may not know that this new therapy exists, or lots of patients are savvy and they Google and maybe they'll go to the doctor next door. Someone else will provide it. So there's an onus on us physicians to be at our A game, to do our research, to somehow squeeze in that time between soccer practices, on my off time before heading home, to say, I need to spend X amount of time doing my research, staying up to date, attending conferences, going to symposiums, being a part of live chats to see what is the latest and greatest. My dream, magic wand, someone somehow could synthesize everything I need to know and just get it to me in a package. I don't know exactly how that would work, but I envision that with the help of AI, that might be possible. With the help of the representatives, AI, and understanding my needs, my field, my specialty, you could kind of filter out all the extra noise and you could just streamline, here's what you need. And again, I know other professions have done that. Engineering, law, IT companies, they've found a way to do that. So I'm confident there has to be a way to do that for medicine as well.
Yeah. I imagine one of the difficulties with that is that it's such a changing field, that there's just so much happening, so much at once. Like you said, with the diabetic medicine, that to really condense that and make sure it's streamlined it's a moving target, right? So it makes it pretty difficult.
And it's so hard, Kate, because, I've met with representatives that will tell me, how can I get a hold of your colleagues? It's great that somehow I got in to see you and the stars aligned and it was an accident. It took 2 months, but I got in to see you. How can I get in to see your partner, your colleagues? And I'll say, oh man, that's a tough question, because I think they would benefit. I think they would love to hear about your therapy, but unless they hear about it, unless their light bulb goes off that, listen, this is great, my patients would benefit, you're just another little voice trying to reach out to them amongst the hundreds of voices they get every day. So, getting that information out there and education is huge. That's something I would tell the companies, the representatives, the devices, the pharma, that the education component is huge. And that's a great way to get to a doctor's heart, is saying, we need to educate you. Not, hey, we're trying to make a sale, get all your patients on this medicine. It's the next best thing since sliced bread, because none of it is. Everything says it is. But just be honest, say, we'd love to educate you on X, Y, and Z, and you'll get to our heart right away, because we all want to do the best for our patients.
Right. And actually, back to a point you mentioned earlier, is that with compliance and with different legal parameters that they have to follow, that again, it's another moving target that I'm sure that's just constantly evolving. What are we allowed to say? What education is allowed to be out there? What do you only have to have with the doctor as opposed to with a rep? And, there's a lot of nuances there that could make it tricky. So, okay, there are a couple more questions that came in. So the next one is, how do you stay connected with other healthcare professionals in your field?
So two things, conferences used to be the main way to connect with people. You would see old colleagues, alumni, new colleagues, you'd connect with people and it'd be great. I mean, just like any other field, conferences, national, international, are a great way to connect with people. Nowadays, it is really refreshing and just incredibly awesome. I was part of a Zoom call last week where there were maybe 200 people on the call, all like-minded, all interventional pain specialists who just, the conversation was so refreshing, so amazing. A lot of us connected offline after that. So also taking advantage of the technology is critical in staying connected. And then from there, the sky's the limit. There's actually myself and 2 other colleagues that are now starting a DMV, or a DC, Maryland, Virginia chapter. And that's going to let all the practitioners, all the doctors, NPs, MAs, everyone under that bridge stay connected, and an exchange of ideas. And hey, have you heard about this new device? Have you heard about this new medication that's available? And that's the whole concept, is staying connected is critical. It's funny because we understand that as humans, I think on an individual level, we understand that staying connected is so important, staying connected to family, friends, etc. But in the medical field, staying connected on a colleague, on a professional level is equally as important. And so many physicians have lost out on that component because of telemedicine, because they now have private practice and they don't round on the hospital. When I round in the hospital, the few times I do, I get invigorated again. I'm like, wow, I saw 3 colleagues here. I saw this. I saw a new therapy. I saw, blah, blah, blah. It makes me so excited. But let's be honest, a lot of doctors don't actually have to go into a hospital to round. So how do you stay connected? A lot of physicians now can see their patients 100% remote. So how do they stay connected to their colleagues? They're not even going into the office. They're not talking to their 5 partners. There's no water cooler conversation. So I think using that technology to stay connected is critical. What would I love to see? This is Dr. Mehra's wish list. I'd love to see a platform available that said, hey, connect with all the pain doctors in your area or in the country or in the world. Connect with everyone that's board certified in X, Y, and Z. Maybe stay connected with everybody that's across the aisle. I work very closely with the orthopedic and the neurosurgeons. So us forming an alliance is also very important. So it's not just all like-minded and form these silos. There's actually a lot of medicine and therapy that involves bridging therapy. When you talk about cancer care, for example, that never just involves one physician, right? That could involve a medical oncologist, radiation oncologist, a surgeon, nutritionist, physical therapist, all, again, the layers of the onion. So, you can't just think of it single-minded, single track. You don't want to create silos. It's actually bringing people together, exchange of ideas. That's the best way to stay connected.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm sure that actually will be very fruitful to just bounce off ideas of, hey, I found this technology or this device or this drug, and it's really been useful in this case. Someone else could say, oh, well, I've only used it in this type of case. And so having that information sharing has got to be huge just to, help with your practice and kind of how you're going to use things moving forward.
I think of it, Kate, almost like, and I'm a younger parent, and so this is all exciting to me, but it's like these parent blogs or chats that exist, or you open a parent magazine and you'll say, hey, that's actually a great suggestion. I should try that. Instead of bribing them with Oreos, I'll try this conversation. So then you form this parent alliance, whether it be at the kids' tennis practice or online, a mommy blog, whatever works for you at your kid's school. But very similarly, that exists for the professional world as well. Someone saying, I tried this, and this is a trusted colleague saying, I tried this and I had 100 patients that benefited. Here were the downsides, here were the positive sides, and here's what I noticed. Just that 2-minute conversation may have even been more useful than what the representative is trying to be telling me for 2 months or 3 months stalking me. So when you hear it from a colleague, staying connected is critical, because you're also getting a little bit of that unbiased opinion, which is refreshing, and you can usually trust it.
Right. Well, and from the pharmaceutical company side, that actually makes those connections so much more important, because you don't know who they're going to go and talk in those networks of connectivity to help amplify their message even more. So it's just kind of, the domino effects of how that can grow.
And, Kate, I don't mean for this to be like let's, talk negative about pharma, because it's not. They're an integral part of my daily life. Or let's talk negative about representatives. I respect them. I love them. They're the heartbeat of how we're able to do what we do. And I've also been on the other side of it and continue to be, where I'm on the speaker bureaus for some of these companies. And so you may say, well, that's double-sided, Dr. Mehra. How can you be giving an unbiased opinion if you're on the speaker bureau? It's the opposite. If I feel passionate about a medication, a drug, or a therapy, I know it's helping my patients, you better believe I want to spread the word for them, because I say, hey, there could be a doctor that lives, in XYZ zip code that doesn't get to communicate and network. He may be the only doctor for 20 miles, 50 miles. Right. I want him to hear this message and say, I could offer this to my patients. Let me join the 2023 symposium here. Let me join the conversation. They may be practicing 1990s medicine, which you see all the time. They don't have the representatives. They don't have that collegiality. They don't have that community. They've been practicing for 30, 40 years. So if I can help spread a message about something I feel passionate about, of course our forces can align. So I think actually we need more of that in medicine, where pharmaceutical companies, representative companies say, hey, come on board with us, speak with us, but also give your genuine opinion. Tell us, does it work? Does it not work? And again, physicians are more likely to listen to that.
Yeah. And so much more critical to have that communication going on from the reps to the physicians, and making sure that cycle is continuously spinning. So We have another question here, which is, what kind of approaches do you believe are most effective for pharmaceutical sales representatives to engage with healthcare providers, and how do you think technology can be leveraged to enhance these interactions?
That's a great question. And I would say that's like the message that we're trying, or I'm trying to hopefully promote here with this conversation, is that if we can be effective, and I think using that, you've kind of answered your question, because by using the technology, we've automatically become hopefully more effective, not less effective. And so I'm going to list 4 different types of communication: email, text message, various video chats, right? Could be FaceTime, Zoom, could be through a platform. And at the end of the day, we're looking at antiquated communication. In-person communication may be antiquated. Fax machine is antiquated. Snail mail, definitely antiquated. So updating some of that, removing that from your company's, well, it's always worked, so we're going to keep using it. I think that's a huge thing where pharma, medicine, device representatives have failed, is the higher ups will say, you know what, it worked for 30 years, we're going to keep doing it. And that's absolutely the wrong message, because at the end of the day, our core audience, which is our patients, your core audience, which is the physicians and the providers, they have grown and evolved and updated. You're now talking to a new generation of doctors. I use my dad as an example only because he's been in practice as a very busy family doctor for over 30 plus years. And I look at his practice style versus mine. And in ways, I've been able to update and help him. And I say, here's how you use technology to your advantage. You don't have to depend on this Rolodex of cards, right? You can do X, Y, and Z on your phone. You can download this platform. You can do this with a click of a button. And once that's incorporated into the office, you see the efficiencies improve, which is awesome. So I've seen it firsthand. Mm-hmm. My generation, I would say, someone that's been in practice for over a decade, we already think that way, right? Our brain is already hardwired. We grew up with the technology of Instagram and Facebook and texting our colleagues and friends. We grew up with that technology in the palm of our hand, so we already think that way. So if you can meet us halfway, communicate with us that way, you're speaking our language. We no longer need a translator. We no longer need that ping pong effect that we keep talking about. So absolutely, your question, the second part of your question answered the first part. Leverage that technology within the confines of whatever's legal and compliant and allowed. Leverage that technology to communicate effectively. Use it for whatever can optimize your day and my day. Depending on the medication or the device, that may look very, very different depending on the acuity of the level of treatment. And I'll give you a great example. So if I'm prescribing a patient a medication, they could start it today, tomorrow, next week. It may not actually make a difference in the grand scheme of things, let's say for a pain medication, if it's not an acute pain. But if I'm treating an infection that needs the first dose today, like we know this infection is there, we need to treat it now, that level of acuity is so much more different. And if we have a question with insurance, copay, interactions between other medications, I'll say, hey, Mrs. Jones is on Coumadin or on Xarelto. Can she still take this? I need an answer now before I prescribe that medication for legal reasons, for safety reasons. I can't hear back from you next week. So that is a great example of the acuity, the level of acuity of treatment, how I may need an answer now versus, you know what, next week may be okay. The final example I'll give you, Kate, is if I'm in the operating room and a device breaks or is faulty or a lead malfunctions. Again, I need that replacement or advice, or I need to be able to reach out to the company immediately. I can't have someone on the operating table saying, Chris is going to get back to me next week. Like that just doesn't work. So again, if I have 2 device companies and I know, well, company X, always available, always gets back to me. Company Y, not so efficient at communication. Company Y may have the better product, but I won't use it, or I won't use it as often. And that's just reality because it's not as safe for my patients.
Right. No, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, when you need something, you need it now, especially when a patient is in that immediate need of it. So totally makes sense. Okay, another question that we got earlier in the week, which is, what does your email inbox look like? Do you get too many sales pitches? And what percentage of those pitches do you read from a rep perspective?
Most often it's too much. It's too much. It could be a combination of things, companies reaching out saying, hey, we have the dream job available for you in Oklahoma versus somewhere in there, nestled in there, will be new devices, new therapies, new options available. But one of two things happen. Either they're so nestled in all the other junk emails that they don't get my attention, or I may actually open it by accident or on purpose and say, well, this is not a great way to learn about this therapy, or this is not a great way to learn about this device. So it's hit or miss. I would say it has to be targeted. It has to get my attention, and it's about knowing your audience. So the emails I'm most likely to open and click is immediately when I read the subject line, I say, okay, this actually makes sense for my patient population, or hey, this answers a question that I have, or this is a problem that I have and this provides a solution. I'm more likely to open one of those three emails versus, what we all call junk mail, right? It's like if your favorite retailer reaches out to you too much, you end up deleting, you end up unsubscribing. You're like, you know what? I don't need to hear from you every holiday, Mother's Day, Father's Day. I just don't need to hear from you. Versus, you know what? This is effective. I am going on a swim vacation next week or a beach vacation. I need new swimwear. Problem, solution. I have patients that are getting this side effect. They need this therapy. There's a problem. Hey, look, this email provided a solution. My absolute favorite kind of email is the kind that's following up on something, right? So I've reached out, the rep has reached out to me, and we've had a discussion or some kind of initial communication. Maybe I told my MA, hey, I would love to learn more information about this product or this device. And the representative will tailor, custom fit that email to exactly what I needed. That's my favorite email, is they showed a little bit of thought, a little bit of initiation, a little bit of hustle, but they said, hey, here's your need. I'm going to fit that need. Here's an email, read it when it's best for you, and so there is an advantage there because it's not encroaching on my time. I can read it between patients when I have time or on an admin day. And it's great because we can all read that at our leisure when we have time, when we make time for that. So emails are not all bad, but they have to be either customized or tailored to fit the audience need or to fit the doctor's need.
Right. No, that makes sense. Okay, I'm aware that we're getting close to the end, so maybe we can squeeze in another one or two questions here. This question is if you had to choose between text messages, in-person visits, or emails, which do you prefer and why?
I'm going to take this political answer and say it depends, right? Because there are definitely advantages to meeting in person. I don't want to say that all in-person meetings are bad. Again, it's more the element of surprise meeting that's not ideal. It's more infringing upon each other's schedules. That's not ideal. Text messages, I think, are wonderful. Being able to get it directly to my phone, not have to sift through emails. There's a huge advantage there because we all look at our phones multiple times a day. Now, whether we are able to communicate back right away or not, it's a different story. But that is a very effective way of communicating, usually. Now, if we have no relationship and now I'm just getting these random text messages from people, it feels a little bit spammy. It's like, who's this person texting me? Who's this company texting me? How did they get my number? I'm between patients, that kind of thing. So depending on the actual need, is it new? Is it an established product? Do we have a relationship? I think each form of communication has its advantage. I also really love the hybrid model where, I've had representatives reach out to me and say, here's a link to my schedule. Over the next 2 weeks, we can schedule a video call, a phone call, whatever kind of call. Click one or two that work for you and we'll go from there. And so it started as an email, but it ended in a virtual meetup, which is almost as good as an in-person meetup sometimes. So I think taking advantage of the hybrid models, being respectful and understanding the doctor's needs is also critical, right? Maybe for certain physicians, stopping by in person in the hospital in the lounge is the best thing they can do. Maybe for me, that virtual meeting was awesome because we were able to maximize both of our times.
Right. No, that makes sense. It's, I feel like it's most things in life, right? Some things are better suited for certain interactions than others. Okay. So let me try to squeeze in one more if we can, which is, oh, here we go. What are 3 things that every sales rep should know?
So the first one and the most obvious is understand your product. And I don't mean the superficial script, the PowerPoint, whatever they've told you to understand. Do even more research. Let's pick something that just has existed for decades. Let's pick Tylenol, okay? If you're now selling me Tylenol, not selling me, but if you're educating me on Tylenol, don't just understand the slide deck. Don't just understand what you were taught. Do your own research. Take to Google, talk to patients, look at the forums and the chats out there, both from a doctor perspective as well as a patient perspective. Understand your product, be knowledgeable, because you can't fake it. You cannot fake it. We've all tried to fake something in life, right? Whether it's getting out of a traffic ticket or making a sale or whatever. We've all tried. At the end of the day, it rarely works, right? Know your product. Understand the nuances behind it. Do a little more research, because when you actually speak to a physician, when you speak to a provider, we can sense it right away. Like a little baby or a puppy, we can sense it. Is this person confident? Do they know what they're talking about? Have they been around for a while? I love the experienced representatives because they've been around and they've done their research. And just by being in the field, they're able to give me these tidbits and these facts. And so if you're a newcomer in the field, or if you've only been in the industry for a year, how do you combat that? Well, you combat that by doing the extra research, talking to the experienced representatives, talking to your physicians, saying, hey, off the slide deck here, what are your needs? What are your wants? And then when you talk to the next physician, you'll be ready to rock and roll. You'll say, hey, this is what works for people. You'll be confident when you talk, and you're not just making a sale, you're speaking from genuine research and experience. So I'd say, number one, know your product. Number two, within the confines of whatever your company says, use the technology. Join a company, join a pharma device rep that actually is using all this great technology we just spoke about, whether it be its own internal platform, someone that's not using fax machines, that doesn't have unrealistic expectations, because I promise you, your job in that role won't last too long if it's still using all these antiquated ways of communicating. It just won't. Because like I said, it's the law of the jungle. There's someone bigger, better, faster doing it out there that's using all this great technology. They're making it. And if it's not the US, it's Europe, it's China, it's Asia, someone's out there doing it. And at the end of the day, I don't have an allegiance or a loyalty. I've had to make it clear in my mind and heart. I don't have an allegiance or loyalty to one company. I'm going to go with the best product for my patient, the safest product, the most efficient and effective product. And so if you understand that element of me, then you'll know exactly your job and your role, how to do that the best. So I would say use the company, join a company that has a mission of, we're going to incorporate technology in the best way, safest way. We're not in this culture of, it's always worked, we're going to keep doing it. You're going to become the dinosaur. Once upon a time, the Blockbusters, the Kodaks, these were the monsters in their field, right? Can you think of, Kate, I envision that we both went through the Blockbuster era. You went on a Friday night, maybe with your parents, you got the movie, and who could have thought there'd be a time without it, right? Mm-hmm. But if you don't keep up with the technology, we've all seen what happens. You become that dinosaur, you become extinct. So similarly, how sad, right? Blockbuster had a great motto. They should have been the next Netflix or Prime or whatever. But at the end of the day, you don't want your company, your medication, your pharma to become that. And the last but not least, it's a philosophical tidbit, but being respectful, right? Being respectful and understanding that different physicians will have different needs. My old school family doctor father is going to have very different needs than me. Fast-paced, newer generation, different specialty. I'm not family medicine, different specialty, very procedure-driven heavy, very procedure heavy. So, immediately we have different needs, different patient levels, different infrastructures to our office, to our daily basis, versus, a radiation oncologist versus a neurosurgeon. So understanding the physician and the specialty, understanding, being respectful of that is huge. And now if you're doing those three things, I think it's very hard to be unsuccessful, because now you know your product, you're using technology to your advantage, and you're understanding on a human level. At the end of the day, despite all the AI, despite the fax machines and the emails and the texts, we're all human, Kate, right? We all want to feel respected, heard, understood, exchange of ideas, exchange of products, and we're doing the most human thing possible, which is treating patients. So if we can incorporate that human element into all this technology and into all the hubbub and the buzz and the AI, it still is coming down to a human element and a human component. And we can't forget that. We should embrace it. We should love it while incorporating all our technology. If you can do that as a pharma rep, I would love to work with you.
That's an excellent note to leave it on. Thank you so much for your time this hour. I really appreciated this. You carving out this time answering these questions. Any more questions that do trickle in, I'm sure we can handle offline, and we can send an email back or make a post about it. But again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. This was so much fun. Like I said, the biggest thing it does for me is it gives me hope. It gives me hope that we're all thinking on the same lines. We're coming together and working. For too long, I think it's been pharma over there, device over there, legal over there, doctor over here, patients being left behind over here. So the fact that we're coming together, having these conversations is amazing. That's how we develop products. That's how we come up with solutions to all these problems, while incorporating all the great things that technology can do for us. So very exciting. Just love having the conversation and looking forward to the next one.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you again, and have a great day, and goodbye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.